the theme of this week is realistic expectations, realistic ceiling. So let's take a step back from our fandom, or in your case, take a step back from your skepticism, and let's go by a week-by-week basis. And what do you have each week as your expected spread for each game? And if you're watching at home, definitely feel free to play along. But we'll start with week 1 and go all the way to the end.
And this will help us to establish what we individually or collectively think is Rutgers' ceiling this year.
Yeah.
And floor. So the first game of the year, I have said this my entire life. I don't like Boston. I don't like Boston because the city just doesn't have enough personality. But I do love Cape Cod. Cape Cod, what a beautiful place. The University of Massachusetts Minutemen. Last I heard, they were a basketball school. Apparently, they have a football team. I don't know why. I think they did not win a game last year. They're going to open up on the road against the Scarlet Knights. I'm going to have Rutgers favored in that game by 17.5.
Oh, no way. Yeah. That's the exact spread I have, 17.5.
We think alike.
And do you think that they're going to cover?
I do. I think they're going to win something along the lines of 37-13.
Yeah, I think they cover. I think they win by 3 touchdowns. I'm saying, I'm not going to say actual scores because I think we've already done that, but I will say I think we win by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think we win by 3 touchdowns, a little bit more than that maybe, but definitely we're on the same page on that one. And then, as if to try to torture me, we must go back to Boston, unfortunately. I've always told people Fenway, not as impressive. That Green Monster is not as intimidating as people say, nor are the Boston College Eagles, where we go on the road to face a Bill O'Brien team that really struggled last year and that lost their starting quarterback to what could be Rutgers' starting quarterback this year, depending on how the competition, plays out. This game is a dangerous game for both teams, and I think it's really going to help define the trajectory of their season. I am going into this game favoring Rutgers by 3.5.
3.5. So Is that what you think you would say if you were given the assignment, or is that what you think bookkeepers will say?
Both. I can't get in the minds of bookkeepers, but if I was one, I would have Rutgers favored by 3.5, and I think Rutgers comes out with the victory 24-20.
See, I actually had this as an 8.5 point favorite for Rutgers. I'm thinking it's going to be more like 13.5, but I don't think we cover. I think we win by an ugly 10 points where we're up 3, and then in the last 2 minutes we get a pick 6. So it's going to be closer than people think, unfortunately, but I do think that we can hold them off. This is going to be this year's Ohio game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think, so if you look at the Ohio game last year, we had to convert 4th down late in the game to win. Now, if you look at Boston College last year, they did not have a good year. But let's look a little bit more in depth at Boston College. Okay, so what happened? They lost. They lost 42-40 to Michigan State. They lost by 4 to Cal. They lost by 10 to Stanford. They lost by 11 to Pittsburgh. They lost by 5 to Nebraska.
Not bad.
So they lost by 14 to Louisville. They lost by 15 to Notre Dame, and they lost by 2 to Georgia Tech.
None of those are really bad. Honestly, the worst one you could say is Michigan State, maybe.
Right, and that's why it's their record was bad, but if you look closer, they were still competitive against some, quite good teams. That's
very similar story to us.
Yeah.
Well,
but we both agree so far. Rutgers starts out.
I have them 1-1 on the spread. 1-1 against the spread, rather.
Yeah, I have them 2-0 against the spread at this point. And then what we do is we take a trip back in time to 1993.
I know
when a young Lamparello got on American Airlines flight from New Jersey to Los Angeles to be a freshman at the University of Southern California and endured 4 years of mediocrity under John Robinson, his second stint there, except for a Rose Bowl victory in '96. But historic blue blood power USC, for the first time ever, comes to Piscataway to play the Scarlet Knights. USC, as always, will have great players at the skill positions. Defense, somewhat of a question mark. I've got USC favored by 14 in this game, and I like USC to win this game 35-17.
Okay. See, I have USC favored by 18.5, and I think that we do. Yeah, I think we cover. This could go one of two ways. This could be USC 49-16, or this could be maybe like a 14 or 15 point loss. I don't see us winning. I know Donovan sees us winning. I don't see us winning, but I do think we cover. Not that for us it matters too much, but just sort of what to expect for like overcoming average expected result. I think that we do cover, and that puts us 2-1 against the spread so far in my book.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what USC team shows up. When USC is on, they're very tough to beat, but they can be prone to mistakes. Defense, can be a little porous at times. Rutgers going to have to bring their A game, but I do not think an upset is in the works. And we have our good friend here, Austin, here, along with Jason. Oh, welcome, Austin.
Oh, okay.
Happy Monday to you, good friend. So right now we're looking at a season of 2-1 before, I'll tell you, one of the things that always scares me, Gabe, are large animals. I always think they're going to attack me. Bears, moose, bison. And sure enough, the Howard Bison, Howard, often competitive across the board in athletics. Howard comes to SHI Stadium. I've got Rutgers favored in this one by 21. And I've got Rutgers winning 45-10.
Yeah, I would love to give Howard more respect, but athletically, in terms of football, I don't think I can do that. They lost by, I think it was 49 to Temple last year. I think we're gonna be favored by around 26.5, and I think we're gonna cover and win by 35-40. So that's 3-1 against the spread so far.
All right, and I've got 3-1 overall. Austin, on this show, we don't hunt because we love animals. We're not killers. We're companions. So, all right. So, I spent 4 years in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Very interesting place. In the summer, quite beautiful with the cornfields, the sunsets, the lakes, brutal winters, and historically, a pretty brutal Indiana football team. But not last year, national champions. They come in defending their title against Rutgers at SHI Stadium with Kurt Signetti, a new quarterback, but still the same scheme and foundational toughness. I've got Indiana favored by 24. I believe Indiana, the game will be closer than the experts think, and I have Indiana defeating Rutgers 42-29.
Yeah, I said Indiana's going to be favored by 23. So very similar there. Or I said 23.5. I don't think we cover, unfortunately. That's going to be just one of those games for Rutgers. It's going to be this year's Oregon.
Yeah, it could be, but I happen to think that Fernando Mendoza brought to that Indiana team was so huge that his loss is going to be felt, and I could see Indiana with 2 losses.
But Josh Hoover, my friend, and Charlie Becker, they're the real deal. That's going to be this year's version of Mendoza to Omar Cooper Jr. That's
Charlie Becker from Nashville. And then I've always had problems with this very ambiguous city called Baltimore. It has restaurants that are pretty good, things to do that are pretty good, an Orioles team that's pretty good, I guess, in a good year, and a University of Maryland team that's pretty good. So
you're calling them a B-tier city for America?
Absolutely. And okay. I'm saying the same thing about Philadelphia, and I'll tell you why. You got over 1 million residents, and they can't find a broom anywhere to clean the city.
Hey, they found some brooms against the Knicks.
Yeah, they sure
Got
did.
swept.
They sure did. Okay, so what's going to happen in this game? I think it's going to be a pick 'em. I think it's going to be extremely close. I think Maryland wins 30-27.
See, most of my projections for the spread, the betting lines, it's because we're projected to win 4.5 games. So I'm kind of going into this taking my fandom glasses off and putting my who the hell is Rutgers glasses on. And so with this, I'm saying we're going to be the dogs in this by 3.5. Although I do think we win, and this is going to be, in my opinion, and probably yours too, besides Boston College for maybe most of it until the end, this is going to be the first close game of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be very close. I do think Maryland's going to be improved from last year.
Sure.
And, not that Maryland's a tough place to play. Rutgers could win it, but I see it going slightly towards Maryland. And then, from Baltimore, they got to get on a plane, and they've got to go to the only city where not only is it sub-zero temperatures, but they also thought it was a good idea to put a lake there too to make it windy as hell. So Rutgers visits a pesky Northwestern team. I've got Northwestern favored by 2.5.
No way. Same here. We're
Wow.
on the money with a lot of these.
On the money. And I've got Northwestern with a victory 26-23 over Rutgers.
I also have us losing by 3. I never thought I'd be smiling while saying that, but dude, you and I, we don't have a lot of the similar takes on this show. So when we do, we take time to kind of appreciate it, but we've kind of been on the money with most of these so far. So yeah, I think that what's your reasoning, by the way? Because I have my own, and it's not very analytical. It's more just same old Rutgers related.
I think that Rutgers is going to struggle to stop their running game. I think Northwestern is going to probably win the time of possession game. And I think that ultimately going to wear them down in the fourth quarter and win, I think Rutgers will be ahead for a lot of the game, but I think they're going to put together a game-winning drive to win at the end.
See, you give a very reasonable background as to why you think that Northwestern will win by 3. Mine is literally just luck. Same old Rutgers. They're quarterbacked by Aiden Childs, who I said we should go after, and all of Rutgers Nation called me names for that. And then we go and get Dylan Lonergan, who's around the same talent level as Aiden Childs, dare I say, based on college track record, maybe a little worse. And it would just be such a Rutgers thing, right, for Aiden Childs to drop 350 on us, get 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, maybe run for 50 and a score and win by 3. It would just be such a Rutgers thing. And as far as this goes, I was going to ask you this earlier. When you're going through all of these weekly games on the schedule, do you just come up with these background facts on the fly?
Yes.
There's no way that because I swear that we came up with this segment maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I just come up with them on the spot based on my personal experiences of being in those cities.
Hey, that's one benefit of growing wise in your years.
Yes, reminding me that I'm 50 years old, but I'm actually 350 years old in dog years. Yeah,
I guess so.
Yeah, cool me Yoda. Well, the next game as Rutgers returns home to SHI Stadium, I can envision it right now. Bryce Underwood in Ann Arbor getting on the plane with a large carry-on bag, and they say, "No, hold on, sir. You're going to have to check that. It's too big." Why is it going to be too big? Because it's going to have all those $12 million that he got to go to Michigan from those boosters and that collective. And, I mean, he's going to be bringing a lot of money, but is he going to really bring his A game? I don't necessarily think so, but I think Michigan favored in this game by 10. And I think that Michigan, as an overall team, has too much talent and wins the game. In the second half, pulls ahead, wins the game 31-17.
Hold on. You have Michigan only favored by 10?
Yes.
You think at that point in the season based off of our track record, the fact that they have Bryce Underwood, who will be a year wiser, and he already has the natural talent, but now he's learning from his mistakes. He has, I would say, equal, if not better, offense despite losing his star running back. And this is against Rutgers, who hasn't beaten a ranked team. I don't think we've beaten a ranked team since like 2011, 2012, if that. And and Michigan's probably going to be ranked. If not, they could be top 10 by that point. I think the spread is going to be more like 24.5, and I think they're going to cover it too.
Yeah, when I look at Michigan, I'm not saying Bryce Underwood won't become a star. I'm not sure that he's developed enough yet. I'm not sold on the team. When I look back to last year, Michigan beat Northwestern only by 2 points. They beat Michigan State only by 11 points. They beat Purdue only by 5 points. So this is not, in my opinion, a classic Michigan team. And I think it's going to be closer than the experts think, but ultimately Michigan's talent differential pulls ahead.
All right. Well, I strongly disagree with the spread, but I guess we do have similar results. And I know that I get that we're at home, and a lot of these games I think we're going to play better than the experts, quote unquote, predict, but I just don't see it being that close against Michigan, who year in, year out is a top 3 team in the Big Ten.
Fair enough. Well, I'll tell you, about 10 years ago, when I first set foot in Wisconsin, all I heard about was cheese curds. I decided to go to Madison. It was in the summer.
They're very good.
Beautiful campus. The cheese curds were delicious. Beautiful little lake there. Unbelievable. And then you have that little place called Camp Randall with the Flying Fickles. You know, Wisconsin, very strange team of late. You know, their last few years have not been something that they're particularly proud of under Luke Fickell. However, they do always have a traditionally strong defense. And if they're going to win, it's usually going to be at Camp Randall. Couple that with Rutgers struggles on the road. I've got Wisconsin favored by 6.5. And I have Wisconsin winning the game 17-13.
Ugh. All right, we're starting to part paths a little bit. Now, I admit that I was a little more disrespectful to the program that Wisconsin offers in football than most, but I still think that we are going to be not just better than them, but projected better. But I don't think it'll be as big a gap as I previously thought, just because I don't think we're as good. We haven't proven to be as good as previously hyped up to be by yours truly. So I think that we're going to be favored, but only by 1.5. And I do think we're still going to cover and win that game, maybe by like 3. So it'll be close. But I know that Camp Randall is somewhat of a hostile environment, and we do not have a good record on the road. But I just think the talent level, we are a little more talented than them, and I think that our poise will keep us together.
You know, Wisconsin last year was a tale of 2 teams, really. I mean, you know, on one hand, Wisconsin loses to Maryland by 17. They lose to Iowa by 37. They lose to Ohio State by 34.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Wisconsin beats Washington at Camp Randall 13-10. They beat Illinois at Camp Randall 27.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And at Oregon, they only lose 21-7. So that defense is what scares me. Now, as far as Camp Randall goes, I don't see anything campy about Camp Randall. They should rename it immediately. But it's just the kind of venue on a Saturday night where I think Rutgers does another Rutgers.
See, that's how I see the Northwestern game.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it can unfortunately happen multiple times. Geez, you know, I came into this show like really excited about the season, but I guess the theme of this week is realistic, but damn, it's really bringing my hopes down a little bit.
Yeah, well, you know, we're not biased here. We call it like it is, but we certainly hope that it's going to be better than what we're prognosticating here.
This is also like kind of the prove me wrong week.
Yeah. And don't hold parades. You might not get in.
Unfortunate.
You know, in 19, I think
if you don't get in, you also might get sick from it too.
That's right. In 1985, I think it was, a young 10-year-old Lamparello sat down in front of a VCR and saw a movie from Gatlin, Nebraska. Never knew anything about Nebraska until then, called Children of the Corn, and had nightmares about it for the foreseeable future. Nebraska, a beautiful state with lots of farms, cornfields, the College World Series. A lot to like about Lincoln, Nebraska, and Omaha. And, of course, you can't forget that Nebraska team that fell short in the national championship game 1984, only to win back-to-back titles in 95 and 96. Now, Nebraska is not Nebraska, but they will come to SHI Stadium with Dylan Raiola. Oops, wait a second. Dylan Raiola went to Oregon to sit behind Dante Moore. Okay. They will come to SHI Stadium with untested quarterback in TJ Lateef. And their offensive line for Nebraska was not good last year. I'm not sure how good they're going to be this year, but they're going to bring a very tough defense. I've got Nebraska favored by 2.5.
Okay.
And I've got Nebraska winning this game 14-10.
Ooh, that's an ugly game. But you know what? That's very reminiscent of not being able to convert at the goal line 2 years ago. That was against Nebraska, right?
Yeah, against Nebraska, they have first and goal, I think, at the 3. And then Monangai couldn't get in, unfortunately. Blocking wasn't very good. Then they had the fake field goal that didn't work. I think a missed field goal. It was definitely a game that should have been won.
Yeah, and this is another game that we should win, not because we're expected to win, but because this is one of those games where we're going to go in there with the mindset that we have to win for the respect of this organization. But I do think that even with the down year from Nebraska, after last year's Dylan Ravioli show for most of it, and then getting injured, and the year before, him kind of coming out of nowhere to put on this Patrick Mahomes impersonation, I do think this is a transition year for them. But I still think that being in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten is still a step up from us. So I believe that they're going to be favored by around 4.5. And I think we cover, but I still think we lose.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I'll tell you something, Gabe. When I was teaching at a school in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I would go home for the holidays and home for the summer here in New Jersey. And then I would drive from Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, about 9-hour drive to Fort Wayne, Indiana. When I got to the Delaware Water Gap and I passed eastern Pennsylvania, it was about 5 hours of nothing. I thought I saw ghosts, cults. I was nervous. You see hotels with names you've never heard of, restaurants with names you've ever heard of. I actually went into a restaurant somewhere in, I believe it was Clarion, Pennsylvania, and I said, I will have a vodka soda. They said, what type of vodka? I said, Grey Goose, and they shouted out, we have a high roller in here. And then I thought at that point, I may not walk out alive. So my point is, I'm not so sure what's so happy in Happy Valley. Seems pretty unhappy to me. And unfortunately, when Rutgers goes to Happy Valley, I think Penn State's going to be favored by 9.5. And I think Penn State's going to win the game 30-14.
Yeah, I have them favored by 10.5. They're going to look very different this year from years past. It's going to be more of a passing offense. And that's one area of Rutgers' defense that is very unproven. So I do think that we are maybe going to cover, just because with Penn State, we like to play them close but still find a way to lose. And unfortunately, the same old Rutgers mindset is probably going to prevail. And also the fact that this is at Penn State too is not a great sign for us. So yeah, I have us covering, but in a loss. Yeah,
I mean, from what I've heard, Katron Allen is still to this day at SHI Stadium replaying those huge runs that he had in that victory last November. A game that Rutgers should have won against a Penn State team that at times looked like they couldn't stop us at all. But I don't think we have much of a chance in Happy Valley. But, you never know. Now, let me tell you something. I've been in Michigan a few times. Ann Arbor is a beautiful place. The University of Michigan campus, very beautiful, high academic standards. The stadium, very large, the big house, although not very noisy. once you get out of Ann Arbor, though, you go to Lansing, and it just doesn't have the same feel to it. It kind of has a feeling like, we were almost great, but just couldn't get there. The Spartans of Michigan State come into SHI Stadium. I've got Rutgers favored by 7.5, and I've got Rutgers winning the game 34-13.
Damn, okay. You see us ending on a high note, barring a bowl game. I think that we're going to be favored by 2.5, and I think we'll cover. Michigan State loses all their talent, and we kept our talent, thankfully, or most of our talent. And that's, I think, the difference. That's why we win, is we have more comfortability within the program.
Yeah, and I think if I was President Tate at Rutgers, before the game I would call the president of Michigan State and request that they not wear those ugly green uniforms, because it's not aesthetically pleasing. Wear something professional, look decent. I don't like those green uniforms. I don't like them as a team. I think one of the things that's hurt Michigan State a lot is so many people have left the team to transfer in recent years that, you got to feel bad for some of the players. I mean, they're not a horrible football team, but
last game, great developing talent. I think they're in the top 20 for draft picks from program.
Yeah, I mean, historically they're competitive, but I think last game of the season, Bon Jovi's playing. I'm drinking sangria. People are excited. The holidays are coming. Nah, not your day, Michigan State.
Yeah, I think, and so let me do some quick maths here. Let's see.
I was just thinking the same thing.
1 cover, 2 cover, 3 cover, 4 cover, 4-1. 4-2, 5-2, 5-3, 6-3, 7-3, 7. Okay, I got us 8-4 against the spread.
Okay, well, I was just looking at the record projection that I have based on my predictions, and I hate to say it, I've got Rutgers at 4-8.
Well, that's unfortunately right around where most bookies have us, 4.5 wins, and it sounds shocking, but you have the under.
Yeah. And, here's the thing. I don't see Coach Schiano allowing this defense to perform like it did last year. I just don't see it. I think his pride was hurt. I think he was embarrassed, and I think he was pissed off. And I think that defense, he's going to be on their asses next year, so they will be improved. But the offense, there's just the quarterback position and the depth at wide receiver. And, it has me a little concerned, but I think they'll be capable. Just not enough to get over the hump in those, kind of toss-up games.
It's just very top-heavy, and the plus for that is you're using your more talented players more, but the negative to that is that you're more predictable. So which one will be which one will weigh more than the other, essentially?
Yeah, and Rutgers has nothing to lose. They should be playing loose the whole season. They're not expected to win. So just like at Ohio State, when they were very competitive with Ohio State until Bradley Weaver decided to go off the reservation and try to play serial killer and attack Julian Sand. But there were glimpses last year, like against Ohio State in those first 2 quarters, that showed what Rutgers could be. It's not consistently there. I don't expect it to be there this year, but I do expect a very exciting season.
Oh, yeah, for sure.